It's time for another conceptual aside. This one is arrays, collections of anything. I'll assume that you're already familiar with the basic concept of arrays and perhaps have seen or worked with them in JavaScript. But just to be clear, an array is a collection. It holds many things inside of it. So an array can be declared, let's just call it ARR. I could either go new array, which is a lot to type, or I can use the array literal syntax. Very much like the object literal syntax, except it's brackets instead of curly braces. And then I can put my values, whatever I want to be in the array, separated by commas. And JavaScript arrays are zero-based, meaning that I then use brackets to determine what element I want to grab. And so it'll be 0 for the first one, 1 for the second one, 2 for the third one, and so on. So we start with 0 and go forward. So that's pretty clear for anyone that's done any programming with arrays. That said, JavaScript arrays are a bit different because JavaScript is dynamically typed. In most programming languages, an array can hold a list or a collection of things of a particular type. So an array of numbers, or an array of strings, or an array of objects. But JavaScript isn't like that. It figures out what types of things are on the fly. It's dynamically typed. So I can put whatever I want into an array, and I can mix and match. Each individual item in an array can be a different type. So I might have a 1, a number, and then my second one might be a Boolean, like false. And maybe my third one's an object. All right, let's just give ourselves a little white space. Don't be scared by this white space. It's just making things easier to read. It still works the exact same way, and the engine processes it the same way. Maybe my third one is an object literal. So maybe I'll have a name property and an address property or something like that. So I could have an object sitting in my array, and then maybe my fourth one, here this is again one of those things that people find a bit confusing, but now that we understand functions are objects, and I can just use a function expression here, and then I've created a function and stuck it inside my array. Maybe I'll just console.log greeting plus name. So I have a greeting and give it a name, it'll output it. Again, note this is an expression because it's not by itself, it's inside this array declaration. So the JavaScript engine understands that this is creating a function on the fly there. It's not a function statement, it's a function expression. And maybe I'll put one more thing, a string. Now I've got this array that contains a number, a Boolean, an object, a function, and a string. So if I was to output this, is this going to give me an error? I'll run it in my browser. Nope. A number, a Boolean, an object, a function, a string. So a JavaScript array can hold collections of anything. For that reason, we can write lines of code that look a little terse, or maybe a little strange, but are quite interesting and quite simple, really. Remember, I have my array. I can reference an element in it. So let's say I want to reference the function. So it's 0, 1, 2, and the third element in the array. So it's a 3. Now I have a function right here. This will get that function from memory. And how do I then run the function? How do I invoke a function? Well, I invoke it with parentheses. And this function wants a name variable. So maybe I'd like to give it this name. How would I do that? I can just go to my array. That's the second element there, or the third element rather. It's 0 base, 0, 1, 2. So it's the third element, so I use a 2. And then dot name, because this gives me the object. I use the dot operator, and it will then let me grab the name property. So I'm passing the name property of the third item in the array to a function that I'm calling that's the fourth item in the array. Do you see that? Looks kind of strange, but it works. I'll just add a space here. Make it look a little nicer. There we go. So arrays can hold anything. I can reference them, and they can even hold functions, and I can call them. This is a neat thing about JavaScript's dynamic typing, and can be useful. All right, let's move on.